is the Rebel Author Podcast, where we talk about books, business, and occasionally bad words. Hello, Rebels, and welcome to episode 125 of the Rebel Author Podcast. 120. Didn't we only just have episode 100? How the hell has it been 25 weeks since episode 100? Unbelievable. That is a quarter of the way to 200. And look at me doing maths live on air. I'm thrilled. 125. That feels like a lot of fucking episodes now. I am really pleased. So thanks, guys, for sticking around and listening. And I will get on with the intro. This episode, I'm talking to Emma Byrne. She is a returning rebel. We don't often have returning rebels, but Emma is a returning rebel. And today we're going to be talking all about how to build a professional author network. But first to last week's question, which was, how do you or what books have gotten you out of a reading slump? Amy Sund said, I go back and pull something new off my TBR or revisit a series I stalled on previously. Or humour. I'll reach for something humorous if I've been stewing in sobering historical fiction for a while. Yeah, and I have to say, humour does tend to get me out of most holes, but I seem to struggle to find humorous books. There aren't as many funny books as, I don't know, maybe I'd expect. Kerry Hudisky said audiobooks. I have the Libby app on my tablet so I can borrow audiobooks from the library, since mum life leaves me so exhausted most days to actually read anything other than kids' books. I listen to my books when I'm driving or making dinner. Yes, I love that. So I do a lot of listening to audiobooks whilst I'm cooking. That's kind of like my hour. Since I no longer have a commute, and my commute was when I mostly got to listen to my audiobooks, I now tend to do it whilst I am cooking. Alexa Rivers said, I was in a massive reading slump last year. I cast aside so many books that were probably great, but just not what I felt like.
I'm not sure about that.
Wow, that was aggressive. Alexa, you have set off my Alexa. Alexa, stop. I'm going to leave this in just because it's funny and I forgot that was a thing. Hello, tech. Okay, so she says, Ms. Rivers says, I'm sorry, I may have butchered your pronouns. I hope that you are a Ms. and please feel free to email me and correct me if I'm wrong. They say, eventually I discovered Lucy Lennox, small town romances and devoured every single one. Then I had an existential crisis when I ran out and ended up turning to one of her co-writers, Sloane Kennedy. I've now read her entire backlist too. Holy moly, I love whale readers. You are amazing. When people go and read an entire backlist, I just think it's so fantastic. So there are very few people who I've read their entire backlist, but there are definitely authors who I either intend to read their whole backlist or I have read the majority of what they've read. V.E. Schwab being one of them, I have read the vast majority of her books, and I am probably going to try and finish most of the rest of them this year. Okay, so this week's question is, what is this week's question? Okay, right, this week's question is, what is the hardest thing you've done in your writing journey? And I ask that because of my personal update, which I'll come to in a moment. But first, the book recommendation of the week this week is Newsletter Ninja 2. If you give a reader a cookie, supercharge your author mailing list with the perfect reader magnet. Now, I did pre-order this book, and then very kindly, Tammi sent me an ARC copy because I interviewed her the day before her book came out. So I sat and read it that evening. It's a short book. It's a fantastic book. You can really see, everybody drink, her strengths coming out because she has very high ideation and her book is jam-packed full of ideas for your reader magnet. So I just thought it was fantastic, and yeah, really enjoyed that, and I look forward to when the paperback comes out so I can get a copy and mark it all up. So yeah, highly recommend that. Okay, so personal update this week. My audiobook is still on discount. So if you would like to get 13 Steps to Evil, How to Craft a Super Bad Villain in audio, then you can by buying direct from me and using the code FAB 50. And I will, of course, leave a link to that in the show notes. So my personal update, I'm now recording a day early. So instead of recording on Fridays, I'm recording on Thursdays now, which is going to give me my Friday back because I have sometimes meetings on Thursdays. And so it's nice for me to be able to have a whole day and also the day before the weekend. So I'm kind of going to use the day to work on whatever project I most want to, I think. And that is exciting to me. And also, you guys, I finished the fucking book. I am so deliriously happy. I have finished Trey. I sent it off to the editor last night. 4 motherfucking years later, literally 4 years later, I sent the book to the editor. Oh my goodness me, there are so many lessons I've learned, so many things, so many ways I've grown. Never, ever, ever, ever will I ever let a book take that long. I will never get thrown into so many basements ever again. I have learned so much. Look, you guys know that I have had a tumultuous relationship with this book, and I am still proud of it. Is it the best book it could ever be? Maybe not, but I'm okay with that. I tried really fucking hard, to make it the best that I could possibly make it. And it's gone, it's done. I'm happy. The series is over. I can move on. I'm free. I'm trying not to burst into song. You guys don't need your ears to bleed. But yes, oh my goodness me. I think you can probably hear the delirium in my voice. The thing is, why are writer brains such fuckers? Last night, I sent off the book probably about 4 or 5 o'clock and in the afternoon. And then by 10 p.m, I was a fucking wreck. Literally a mental wreck. I was spiraling so hard. I came back down to my computer at 11:30 at night, and my dear friend Helen was like, back away from the computer. And of course I was just spiraling. I was like, what if I can't write a better book? What if I choose the wrong non-fiction book to write next? All of this stuff, all of this bollocks and nonsense. Oh, what if I'm not good enough? I can't teach, I can't do this. And shut the fuck up, Sasha. So boring. Stop it. It's all bollocks and nonsense. It's just the relief, I think, and the weight off my shoulders of completing that thing that was so hard. And that's why I've asked the question this week, what was the hardest thing you've done? By far and away, the hardest book I've ever written was Trey. And so, yeah, I'm so excited to embark on this new adventure. And, I'm also excited because now I get to market that series. I've kind of not really done anything with it because it wasn't complete, and I didn't, because there were only 2 books in the series, I didn't feel like I could get a good return on my investment. I did, I got ads working on Facebook at one point when it was in KU and stuff, and it's had readers, it's had a lot of readers, but I don't know. I think that with all my yellow strengths, yes, you can all drink again, I don't know, I have a fragile fucking ego. It's really hard, and I'm a perfectionist, and for all those things being great, they are also crippling, and they can really ruin me, and they can ruin my mindset and make me fear and not want to promote things. They make me not want to promote my fiction, and they make me say things I shouldn't say, negative stuff, and I shouldn't do that. It's wrong and it's stupid, and I just shouldn't do it because it puts me in the wrong mindset. And I don't do it with my nonfiction because, I don't know, there's no ego there. I am sharing the things that I've learned and tactics and methods that I think would work. And so it comes, my nonfiction comes from a very humble place, whereas my fiction, I suppose in a way, is more of a legacy thing. And so that's fragile, and it makes me vulnerable, and I don't fucking like it. I like keeping my big shield and my armor on. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm chatting bollocks and you guys don't I don't know, maybe you can't, I don't know, maybe you can. Can you understand what I'm saying? Am I talking out of my arse? Do you sympathise, empathise, whatever the correct word is? Can you get where I'm coming from? I don't know. If anyone else feels like this ever, let me know so that I don't feel like I'm on my own on an island. Okay, so what now? Well, tomorrow I am going to treat myself to go into town and do a little bit of shopping, fun to celebrate. And then I'm going to go and buy a massive coffee the size of my face, and I'm going to sit down with a notepad and a pen, and I'm going to think in silence on my own. It's going to be glorious, and I'm going to write stuff down, and I'm going to plan, and I'm probably then going to ignore all my plans, but I'm going to just give myself some time and headspace tomorrow. And then next week I will be working on sorting out all of the launches. So we've got the Rebel Author Anthology launch, which is now coming up, and I will start putting out lots of information very soon. I just had to get this book off my plate. And so of course I will be planning the Trey and Sirens launch. And I'm going to be doing all the input for my next non-fiction book, which I'm very, very excited about. And I will tell you about probably next time, I think. So yeah, that is me in a nutshell. I think I've waffled on for long enough. So let's get on with the Rebel of the Week. So the Rebel of the Week this week is Anneli. Anneli says, when I started my first full-time job, it was in a very old-fashioned workplace, in a very old-fashioned industry. I had a very menial job, but was hoping to get to do more challenging work in time. I quickly realised that as one of the girls, people tended to look at me whenever coffee was needed for a meeting. Oh, my hackles just raised. I love live reacting to these because you guys can set my emotions off. I can instantly rage on your behalf. I'm like, hell fucking no. Since I didn't drink coffee, oh my God, this is even worse. I simply decided not to learn how to handle the coffee machine. Yes! And claim that someone who drank coffee had to make the coffee or it wouldn't taste right. I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Everyone else drank coffee, and everyone, including the CEO, knew how to handle the coffee machine. So this worked beautifully. I worked there for several years and never had to take sole responsibility for the refreshments at meetings. I fucking love that rebellion. I love it, one, because it's about coffee, and two, because too fucking right. Who the fuck do they think they are? Especially if you don't drink coffee, but also fuck the patriarchy. So yeah, anyway, love that rebellion. Thank you so much for sending that in. If you would like to be a Rebel of the Week, please do send in your stories. I love them. I love them so much. They bring me so much joy reading them out on the show. And it really truly can be any kind of rebellion. It can be something big, something small. Maybe it's something your husband or wife or spouse did. You can email your Rebel story to Becca on rebelauthorpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, a massive whopping thank you to Jennifer Kane and Pia Gasberg. Pia has joined at the Rebel Readers Masterclass Rebel Readers group level. So very exciting. You can get access to all of the old classes, and we have a group film movie night next week on the 17th of February, I want to say. Well, it's in Patreon anyway. And both of you have joined at the Slack level. So come on over and join the community. You should have all of that information in your inboxes. An enormous thank you to all of my existing patrons. You guys know I love you. If you would like to support the show and get early access to all of the episodes, as well as bonus content and goodies and Slack group and Rebel Readers Masterclasses, then you can from as little as $2 a month by visiting patreon.com/Sasha Black. Alrighty, that is it from me. So let's get on with the episode. Hello, and welcome to the Rebel Author Podcast. Today, we have naughty returning rebel Emma Byrne. Emma is an honest-to-goodness robot scientist who, when she's not developing intelligent systems, writes for Forbes, the Financial Times, and Global Business magazine. She is the co-host and executive producer of Nonfic Pod and frequently appears on Sky News and the BBC talking about the future of artificial intelligence and robotics. Hello, and welcome back.
Hi, I'm so thrilled to be back.
Thank you so much for coming back. So for listeners, Emma was on episode 73, which was back almost exactly. And in fact, when this airs, it will be all but one day to the letter of a year since you were on the show, and I have actually scheduled that purposely because I thought it was funny for you to come back exactly a year later. So yeah, episode 73, and we were talking about why swearing is good for you, which of course it is absolutely fabulously good for you, and you should just throw out your fucks and shits and go off and listen to that fucking episode. So
I feel like coming back for my 1 year fuckiversary. It's yes.
Brilliant. Oh, I love it. So this will be another very sweary episode. But would you like to tell everyone what you've been up to since you were on the show a year ago?
Yeah, so the next nonfiction book came out. The natural progression from swearing was obviously parenthood. So How to Build a Human came out, and it became so apparent to me. I mean, I'd known anyway from talking to my many author colleagues in the world that the last 2 years have been shit for anyone launching a book. And I'll talk a bit when we're talking about professional networks, but the number of people I know who debuted in either 2020 or 2021 who have had the most dreck time. And so when the second book came out and I realized what a different experience I was having when the first one came out, in terms of live events, in terms of the news being open to having some sort of slightly more light-hearted episodes. We have no room for light-hearted right now, in terms of being able to actually meet people face to face and make those connections. All of that vanishing has been painful in the extreme. So the last year definitely has been a steep learning curve in learning a different way of both marketing a book and myself as an author and broadcaster, but also learning how to help others in that same situation, particularly those who didn't have a pre-pandemic publication experience, who've never had that experience of going out into festivals and who are now maybe getting their first ever invitations to come and speak at events and are going, I don't know, people in a room, me, no. So yeah, I'm here to say, if you can do it safely, people in a room is actually one of the best things about being an author. So yeah, it is. I think we're at this strange point in time where, like, I don't, and this definitely isn't the case for everybody, but for me, I've just been in survival mode. So like for 8 months, my son didn't go to school, literally 8 back-to-back months. I had him at home trying to run a business. Like, and that was my business is my sole income. Like, that's it. I have my business. So the fact that I was having to homeschool him and do fucking like 6 hours of fucking worksheets or whatever the bullshit was that was being sent home, in amongst trying not to throttle each other. And that really did go both ways. It was just about survival. Just get to the next day, just get to the next day, just survive today. And I actually think a lot of us are crashing and burning now. Yeah, for sure.
And I don't necessarily mean like physically, I just mean like the mental toll, because some people crashed and burned immediately because like their connections were cut off, or, they were sent home and they're people and, or whatever. So lots of people were like not productive then. I'm actually finding that like I am now swimming through like mental, I don't know, agitation.
Treacle?
Treacle. Yeah. Like I've yo-yoed, like I've been really steady. It's like I'm one of these people that can cope in a what's it called? Like a stressful situation. Yeah. But then the minute the pressure lifts off, I then deflate. And I feel like that's what's happening to me now. But I mean, obviously, I'm still like working or whatever. But yeah, I definitely, like, I've got a few friends that are just now, that pressure is anyway.
It feels like the emotional, the psychological, the cognitive overdraft that I've been up against the limit of for the last two years, that suddenly the bank of my inner resources has gone, we're going to start charging you for this.
Yeah, exactly. Which is when like a professional network comes in really handy, because you have those good friends like what the fuck is going on?
Is this normal?
Yeah. So here's the strange strange thing about the pandemic, right? So, and we're already tangenting. I knew this was going to happen. We love a good chin wag, don't we? So what I have found in terms of communication with other people, pre-pandemic, I was like, hard and fast texter only. Don't fucking call me because I'm not going to pick up the phone. Like, I will not pick up. I'll get on a Zoom with you any day of the week. Come on, let's go with the Zoom. Text only. Don't call me. When mutual sort of family friends call, I just hand the phone to my wife and she deals with it because I just don't pick up the phone. People don't even bother calling me now. And but you know what I do? I voice memo. I don't text anymore. I voice memo because it's a connection. And isn't that weird? That is totally like, and the first time that happened to me in my DMs, I was like, the fuck, who voice memos in an Instagram DM? And now that's all I do. And I think it's something to do with that connection and that kind of like building a stronger connection with others and other professionals, which is a great segue. You see where I went there?
Yeah, I do. That's awesome.
Yeah. Into my first question for you, which is, what is a professional network, and like why is it so important? What does it even look like? Like, what do you mean when you say a professional network?
Yeah, I mean, there are as many different types of professional networks as there are different types of authors. And I would say I probably belong to a couple of different ones. So when it comes to non-fiction writing, I run for the Society of Authors, their London non-fiction meetups. And that's fantastic. And one of the things about the pandemic means that because it's been on Zoom, we now have people who are joining from outside London and even outside the UK. But that's very much a place of mutual support, a place where people go to talk about their progress, to ask very specific questions. It's a bit cheerleady, but it's that kind of if you sort of imagine, if any of you have ever worked in the corporate world, I did do a few years in the corporate world, but that sort of idea of a business breakfast, once a month you go to some horrible sort of mid-range travel lodge type thing and all sort of meet up and just sort of go, how are things with you? And so there's nothing explicitly mentoring about that. It's very unstructured. We literally just hop on a Zoom once a month and talk to one another and go into little breakout groups. And it's just enough to remind ourselves, I think, that we're all going through something similar. And the most important thing about that kind of network is people doing very similar things, all writing nonfiction, but at different stages in the cycle and at different stages in their career. So people who are on, who have had a book or 2 or 3 published can help those who are writing their first proposal. People who have had 7 or 8 books published can talk about, is it time to maybe renew your relationship with an agent? People who've been, a great conversation that came up in the last one was someone who'd been approached by TV rights people wanting to make a series based on their book, and 2 people going, I have horror stories. And I was like, right, you guys are going in a breakout room then. So that's sort of fairly ad hoc and unstructured. The other one I'd say that is, again, very much focused on nonfiction, but is a lot more, it's broader and it's slower to grow and it's very, very, very structured, is Nonfic Pod. And I don't know whether you consider Rebel Author to be part of your professional network. I consider it to be part of mine just by listening to it and being part of your community, that this podcast is part of my professional network. Your voice is one that works for me. And on Nonfic Pod, we get on authors not just to talk about their books, but about the process of writing, specifically nonfiction. And the professional network around that are the publicists, the publishers, the people who put together the sales calendars for each of those bookshops. And over time, I'm realizing that I now have a whole bunch of people who I can drop an email and go, who do you think would be good for, the sort of October to December slot? Or we're really looking for some kids nonfic. Who have you got? And rather than wading through all of that myself, I can go and ask those people for their expert input, and that is a wonderful thing. And then the final thing is I'm putting an event together for this summer called Wild Words Festival, which is broader still and is for all kinds of writers, performers, actors, anyone who loves the written or spoken word. And that was born out of a want to give back some live space to people who have either been out of it for a long time, or particularly I'm prioritizing people who debuted in the last 2 years, and just say, look, if you've never done this, if you feel like you missed your shot, then join us for this and talk in front of a friendly, passionate audience about your book, about your project, and also talk to other people. You know, the green room at any public speaking event, any literary festival, any science festival, the green room is definitely part of that professional networking thing. So yeah, that you need one of these, you need a professional network basically for that sense of mutual support. So yeah, I say normalcy and structure, ability to access brains outside your own. You know, you need a hive mind, and essentially just exposing yourself. I would really like to have another swing at that one, not exposing yourself to others, but reaching other audiences. You know, it's astounding how much things like crime fiction and romance, you know, the audiences overlap. And so having that, those sort of slightly overlapping Venn diagrams of the networks you're involved in can really help. And it keeps what you're doing quite fresh as well.
Yeah, it's interesting thinking about the podcast as a network builder, but it is in a way, because it certainly breaks the ice. So I have a reason to contact people who maybe I wanted to contact for other reasons, right? So like I can think of a few people who I've reached out to of late, and I don't mean it in a Machiavellian way, but they are people who I find interesting and would like to communicate with more, purely from the fact that I find them fascinating and want to know more. And so having the podcast gives me a reason to be like, oh, let me help you promote X, Y, and Z, while also helping my audience, because here's a load of tips, guys, about how you can improve or do something better. But then, you know, once you've had somebody on the show, there is that lingering connection, because it only takes one more email or one more reach out. And then, you know, you've got kind of a permanent connection. They're not likely to forget you, you know, especially like when you're face to face and stuff. So I don't think I'd ever really thought about it. But yeah, I do think that this is like a huge part of my ability to network, because I have a way to help listeners, to help guests, to help myself, because I get to learn and grow, like just from talking to other people. But there's so many questions that I wanted to bring up based on what you said. Let's say, so a lot of a couple of the things that you mentioned came from being part of a society. So like, how else can people build a network? Let's say you can't afford the £100 a year membership. Like, how else can people build a network? How can you meet people, especially in this day and age where like events are only just starting to come back?
Absolutely. A really useful resource is Meetup. So having a look to find your either geographically local or something that's hosted on Zoom, but a group of other writers. And the most important thing, particularly if you're just starting out, is to recognize that other authors are not your competition. They're your colleagues. Netflix is your competition. To some extent, podcasts are a bit your competition. The movies are your competition. When people buy books and enjoy them, they then go out and buy other books. Everybody knows what a book lover's bookshelf looks like. It is not just one book. So never be afraid of approaching these groups and then thinking, well, we all have to side-eye one another, and you know, someone else's success is going to be my failure. Authorship is not a zero-sum game. It really isn't. And the romance lot get this. I have friends in the Romance Novelists Association, and they totally understand that their customer base is enthusiastic, loyal to the genre, but also passionately profligate in their embracing of new authors. And they do so much to lift one another up. And when you see people who are being successful in the genre you want to be successful in, read everything that they say about, who they worked with, where they know people. I mean, we all know that there are certain universities and certain courses that develop a ready-made network if you have the wherewithal to go on those courses.
This industry is so small. Like, it is a really, like, a lot of industries are small, but this industry is really small.
Yeah.
And the connections between trad and indie are tighter than we think, because quite often people think, oh, well, they're different boats in the same ocean kind of thing. But actually there are so many ladders between the boats, and people are connected to people who you don't realize. Like, literally this morning I found out somebody, I've got to try and keep it anonymous, somebody that I know is the daughter of somebody else that I know, both of whom are in different sections of the industry. And I was like, wait, what?
What?
Yeah, like what? And
that's partly to do with the fact that publishing actually employs a lot of people.
I know.
Both trad and indie. When you think of how, again, most of your listeners are going to know this, but the people involved in making a book is not just the author with the name on the front. The other way of looking at who is in people's professional networks is look at the acknowledgements at the back. And of course, it's always the family.
I always do that. I'm so nosy.
And you can't sort of go, hi, I'd like to join your family. They sound very supportive, although, sometimes one might. But just things like, these are my authors, and this is, these are the events that we go to. Going to anything that's either free or cheap, that is a writing group, a book club, a readers group, to any of those things and go into it with the idea that you can be mutually supportive, that you are not going into that to compete. So it's not how much you pay to join that organization. It is how much sort of sweat equity you're willing to put in.
And what does that look like? What is sweat equity? How can you support each other?
So sometimes, and particularly if it's early on in your own career, that is as simple as saying, hey, that sounds awesome. I'll tell my friends all about it. Your new book sounds amazing. I promise I'll tell your friends. And then when you do, BCC the author. Say, look, I just sent this to my friends saying I met you and your book sounds amazing and that's great. Sometimes it can be something, as simple as just saying, I really read your book and I enjoyed it, or I heard you on such and such a radio show or such and such a podcast and you were great. I'm not talking about blowing smoke up people's asses, but showing that you are, that you recognize that they've put that work in. If you are at sort of my stage, I still consider myself very early stages, but, fortunate enough to have an agent, fortunate enough to have some contacts in the industry. That's when you start handing around those contacts essentially judiciously, and never just give out somebody's email to somebody else. I will make introductions. I'm very careful of people's time. And so if someone says, I'm really looking for someone who might be interested in this sort of thing that I'm writing, sometimes I won't straight away say, yes, I know exactly who you should talk to. I might say, let me have a think about it. And I'll email who I'm considering and say, I have someone who it has a proposal at this sort of stage. Would you be willing to take a look at it? That's more effort from me than just handing over an email address. But it means that the people that I'm introducing to don't get overwhelmed, don't just go, oh God, Emma's sending me another person. And the people that I'm doing the introducing don't end up wasting their time chasing a dead end. So that's what I also kind of mean by sweat equity is actually being quite conscious of the connections that you're fostering.
I love that because it's funny. I have a sort of friend in the industry who does that a lot. And in seeing them do it, I started to do it. And because I was like, oh, this is such a good idea. Like, this is a great person who I've met now because of like our mutual contact. And so I quite often will spot where there are like similarities, or what's the word? Well, not similarities, where there are synergies, and where I think people might get on, or where they're doing a project maybe that's similar and they could support each other or whatever. I think that's such a, because everybody wins. Everybody wins. You're building your network, you're being helpful to other people. the two people that you're connecting are, you know, benefiting as well because they're growing that network, probably getting support or you know, whatever. So I think that is a great example. Yeah. What kind of mistakes, like, have you made mistakes, or have you seen other people make mistakes when trying to grow like a network?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest one we've already touched on, which is seeing authorship, seeing the life of being an author as being part of a zero-sum game, of being in competition with other authors. It's just nonsense. And looking at your bookshelf behind you, and yes, nobody only buys one book. And if you lead people who might enjoy your book to another book that they're going to enjoy, they're going to trust your recommendations. They're going to trust you more as an author. I mean, that makes it sound a lot more mercenary than it is. But when you think about how passionate most of us are about what we're reading and how passionate we are, at least at some stages of the project, about what we're writing, sharing both of those sorts of passion is really useful. It is not a zero-sum game. Another mistake is to go in to a brand new network, completely unannounced, particularly an established one, just straight away with an ask. It's okay to do an ask fairly early on, but get to know the group and demonstrate that you are not going to do the thing where you come in, ask for the thing, and then drop straight back out again. Sometimes that means sort of going along for one or two sessions. Sometimes that might mean emailing the organizer and saying, hi, I'd like to come. I do also have this question. Is it okay to raise that at the first meeting? And more often than not, people will say, yes, absolutely, please do ask the question. But if you imagine that sort of sense of someone knocking on your door and you open it, someone goes, hi, we're in the neighborhood, would you like double glazing? It's a massive interruption. Whereas someone who you at least know, who's been in your network a little bit, asking for something or asking about something is much more likely to be better received. And I mean, a lot of that is to do with some very boring and basic neuroscience about the need to sort of pick each other's ticks off a bit before we start, you know, doing each other's favors, because we are, you know, basically primates. So don't go straight in with an ask. And then I think the other one is the inverse of that is never ever leaning on your network, never ever going. And I'm terrible for this. Never ever going, guys, I'm doing this thing and it's really important to me and I need to get some traction. So I'm learning as I'm getting older, becoming much more confident about saying, hey, we did this thing together before. Can we do another thing together now? And I can see what might be in it for you, but there's also a massive thing in it for me. Does that trade-off work for you? So I still don't go in and just completely go, hey, do me a favor. I'm more of I have a proposition and I have a proposal. So making the mistake of never asking or never putting forward a proposal that considers your own needs and only going in there to serve others, I think that's also a danger. Really good networks are strengthened by reciprocity.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned neuroscience in there, and we all have different brains, but I think when it comes to social stuff, generally speaking, we can be classed as either introverts or extroverts, or we can be classed as outgoing or shy. And sometimes you've got a shy extrovert and sometimes you have an outgoing introvert and vice versa. But for those people who are on the shyer end of the spectrum, what advice do you have to them? Because having moved in the pandemic, I think it was June 2020, we moved. I have found it incredibly hard to make friends.
Yes, yeah.
It is now, what is the date? It is the 2nd of February, 2022. I shit you not, I'm going for my first coffee on Friday. So it has taken me almost 2 years to even find somebody to have a coffee with. Nobody tells you how hard it is to make friends as an adult. Like, no one talks about that. It is totally different to making friends as a kid. As a kid, you just run up and say, can I play? And the kids go, yeah, here's the ball, right?
But how do you do that with adults? There is no game to go and join. There is no ball to chuck at each other. How, like, what advice do you have for that? I don't know, maybe introducing yourself, or like, especially for those people who do struggle more with that kind of being slightly more outgoing. Yeah. What would you say to them?
So there's a number of ways of dealing with it. And I would say that there aren't that many people who choose writing as a profession because they're massively gregarious, because it's not a brilliant job for people who get their energy from being around other people, because you spend so much of it alone. And it is very difficult. Like, as adults, we might make friends in the workplace, but outside of that, it's incredibly hard. So there are a couple of ways of doing it. If you're up for in-person stuff or Zoom stuff, like I said, something like Meetup is very useful. You can also go to some of the Society of Authors local meetups without being a member of the society. It's definitely worth looking at their page and looking at the genres that you're into as well, and seeing if they have, you know, just like a drinks thing near you or an online thing. And the amount of Zoom stuff now means that you have a much better chance of being able to attend something no matter where you're living. But the other thing is asynchronous ways of working together, you know, finding writing groups online, even in, if you can avoid some of the sinkholes of Reddit, you know, so various genre specific places within Reddit. And I, again, showing my age here probably slightly, but even on Twitter, don't underestimate the power of essentially whatever the adult version of Can I Play is on something like Twitter or Insta, of just, you know, saying, wow, your event looks cool. Gosh, this is awesome. You know, there are friends that I have made that I think I probably first met through, you know, sharing a GIF reaction to some good news of theirs. And it's, yeah, you don't have to be even seeing people's faces or using your mouth hole to do words. If this is all too much stress, as it often is. You know, things like online, you know, writers groups. And I don't know how many of your listeners dabble in or have written like a lot in fandom, but there are some very deep and sincere professional, mutually supporting groups that emerge out of fandom. And these can be people who have never met each other and don't even know each other's real names. Actually going to a place to see people in meet space can be overrated if that's not your thing. That said, if you're looking at promoting your work, so this is different to the professional network side of things. If you're looking at promoting your work, there is a lot to be said for actually showing up in spaces. And my trick for that, the best thing that I found for dealing with that, is realizing that I've written this stuff because here was an idea here. For me, it's nonfiction, and for story writers, here's a story, here's some plots, here's some characters that will not let me go. It's got me at it, and I'm passionate about it. And there is a good chance that there are at least, you know, a few thousand people in the world who will feel equally passionate and equally excited about the same thing as you. And if you're in a room with those people, they are going to love to hear what you're saying. They're going to love to hear about how that story came about, where those characters come from, what inspired you. So for me, it always helps to think about the talks that I've enjoyed as an audience member and how enthused and uplifted I've been when someone has taken the time to say, I had this idea and then I did this and I found out some more stuff and then I wrote it like this. And yeah, just sort of go, oh, wow, that's amazing and fascinating, and I didn't know that could happen, or oh, that's an interesting fact about the brain. Or the best thing about recording non-fic pod is I just get to basically quiz people about the most random stuff. Like the most recent one was on how you decide what creatures to save in terms of conservation and ecology, and how those decisions get to be made. And it's like, I get to just pick the brains of a natural history expert for 45 minutes. The thing about authors is there's always that tendency to have a very delayed reaction to our work from the public, and to wait to see, if people are going to like it. Whereas when you've got an audience in front of you, that reaction comes back to you immediately. And I would just say, don't be scared of that. Try to apply the same sort of mechanisms you do, which is either, only looking at the positive reviews, or not looking at reviews at all, or recognizing that there are at least, your book is not for everyone, it's for its audience, and your audience loves it. And recognize that whatever happens in a real life space, sorry, real life is the wrong word here, a physical space, is going to be much gentler, usually much kinder than what happens online. So if you can survive having your work commented on online, you can survive having a group of people who spent their time and their money to bother to show up to hearing you speak, because they're there because they want to hear from you. And I have to basically say that to myself every time before I go on stage, usually while looking around to see if there's a handy bin to throw up in. But yeah, if you are invited to speak in an event and you can make that happen for you, give it a try. Do it with, and start small if that works for you. And ask for accessibility stuff. This is something that we need to be much, much better as an industry. Things like childcare, relaxed performances, BSL interpreters, accessible venues, these should all be a standard. And if people are asking for your time as an author to speak to an audience, that it is absolutely right that you as an author are asking that your needs be met. So I would say that as well.
In terms of making friends, though, as opposed to speaking, I think some of the things that have made the biggest impact on me are walking in wearing something that makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. So let's say if I'm going to London Book Fair, I'm not there to speak necessarily. I'm just there to network or listen to talks or to meet people. But if I go in and I feel confident in my skin, I'm more likely, especially as a socially awkward person, I am more likely to be able to go up to somebody and ask them something. There's a few things that I do to prepare. So let's take London Book Fair as a really good example. London Book Fair is quite good because it provides a ability for you to see who is going. So there is a list of people. And also, if you're in any of the larger Facebook groups online, somebody will invariably post who's going to London Book Fair. And then there's a giant thread of people saying, I'm going, or whatever. Preparing and having a list of people that you want to meet reassures me, because I know that I'm going and I've got a mission and I know who it is that I'm looking for. And sometimes I will have certainly now I pre-book coffees or whatever. But even on that second instance, it was I know that this person's going to be there. I'm going to intentionally bump into them and just talk to them and say hello or whatever. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that everybody loves to talk about themselves. So I know that you were sort of saying that people want to listen to you talk, but for me, like, being quite socially awkward, I don't want to talk. I want to listen to other people. So one of the things that I do is I prepare like a list of conversation starters. And I know that must sound ridiculous to somebody who can just come up with them off the top of their head, but I can't. I freeze in those kinds of situations. So I literally go onto Google and I'm like, what are good conversation starters? Or if I'm in a talk and the talks come to the end and, there's a group of people around me, then I'm like, what did you think of the talk? And I just give people a space to talk about themselves, and there's always things that you can ask authors. What are you working on? What was the last book you read? Right? Because we're all readers and we're all writers. So it's very easy to find things that will be mutually appreciated in terms of what are you writing? What are you reading? Have you already published? do you want to write full time? Like, these are all questions that you can ask that will elicit answers, and people will just talk because people get nervous and they'll just babble. Like, that's what I do anyway.
Yes, same.
And the other thing, like, because I'm exactly the same as you, I will, like, even if I, like, so the first time I went to London Book Fair, I obviously didn't know anybody from anybody. And I was throwing up outside, just racked with nerves because I was going into a giant building with 25,000 people in it. And I phoned my dad, and my dad is like this insanely charming person. And I'm like, Dad, like, how do you do it? Like, why are you so charming? Like, how do you get people to talk to you? Because, like, we'll be in a room and people will just flock to him. It's like he's a magnet. I don't understand. And he said to me, it's really simple. And I was like, okay, right, go on. Like, there's no way it's simple. What is it? And he was like, no, trust me. He was like, you're going to hate hearing this. And I was like, okay. He was like, you smile. And I was like, oh. He was like, honestly, if you look up and don't look at the floor and you smile, people will want to talk to you. Or like, you'll catch people's eyes and they'll like smile and stuff. So like, yeah, there are really simple things that you can do that will help. And just like linking back to the whole being in COVID and how hard I found it here, we were wearing masks. You can't fucking smile if you're wearing a fucking mask. Nobody, you can't tell.
So long laughing at the notion of smizing in the like late 90s and early 2000s. I really wish I'd nailed it now, because it's been, for those young people, this was it America's Next Top Model? And smizing was the whole, you have to smize, you have to smile with your eyes.
Oh,
I never learned how to smize. So Tara Banks.
Tara Banks, that's it. Tyra Banks.
Tyra Banks, yes.
Yeah.
So yes, I rue the fact that I didn't spend the early aughts practicing smizing in a mirror, because it would have worked the last 2 years. Whereas, it's been really difficult, so difficult. What do you think of business cards? Do you still have business cards?
I do. And interestingly, I quite often leave the back blank, because then I can write something down to help me remember like who they are, or I do tend to collect business cards. I don't know that they are a thing to connect you to somebody else. They're more of a tool than they are like necessarily super useful, because if I am going to connect with somebody, like based off of a conversation, I'm probably going to follow them on social media now. Like social media is your business card, right? And that's why it's so important that you brand your social media, and your tone and this content that you're putting out is relevant to who you are and what it is that you're selling. But I definitely still have business cards. The other thing that I often do is I'll put like, I now have podcast business cards with a QR code on the back. So if I meet people, I'm just like, oh yeah, like listen to the podcast and you can get it right here because here's the QR code.
That's a very good idea. I give out shiny stickers for the podcast.
I love that.
A shiny sticker.
Everyone loves a sticker.
Yeah, for Swearing is Good for You, I had pencils made with Swearing is Good for You on them, which is great because now my kids use them for doing the home learning. Oh, you can't see it now. But yeah, it's brilliant. It's really brilliant. So yeah, a box of 200 pencils is surprisingly cheap to have printed. I do still hand out business cards, but I have a tendency to say, would you like a bit of obsolete technology?
Yeah.
Something equally sort of self-conscious is like, are we doing business cards? And that was pre-pandemic. Whereas now it is that thing, you want something. I want something from people that I'm going to find in the bottom of my bag in a few days' time and go, oh, yeah, I really meant to contact that person.
Yeah. So
something physical I find helps. But yeah, honestly, I just giving out pencils or badges. Everybody loves badges, stickers, pencils. I mean, fuck it. Fuck business cards.
Yeah. I know Derek Murphy is an author, a networker. He has the Alliance of Young Adult something on Facebook, which is this enormous like networking group for young adult authors. And when he's at conferences, he hands out badges with the Facebook group. Like, and I think it's genius because you don't forget it. You just clip it to the bag and then you remember afterwards. I think that's a great idea. So yeah,
I've been using a site called Badges for Bands since about 2001. And they don't just do badges for bands, but they do this really good thing where you can get you can order like up to 4 designs in a pack of 50 or something, and it's great. So then people can choose which of your badges they want as well. So I'm not in no way affiliated to Badges Cabans. It's just they've been going since about at least 2001, back when I used to be in a band called Tabby Looking Cat. Oh, it's a long time ago, before YouTube, thank God. So yeah, I highly recommend pin badges. They're surprisingly affordable, and I think probably have a higher hit rate than cards for reminding people that you had a conversation and that they might want to reconnect with you.
I might have to get some Rebel Author ones. So,
for sure.
Okay, so
I think you should send them to all your guests.
So we've introduced ourselves to new people. We've given the merch. Contact. Yeah, we've given the merch. Especially in the times of COVID, how do you then maintain that relationship, and foster it and nurture it?
I think for me, I found having that sort of social brain, and it's not always instantaneous. Sometimes I need to do a bit of research. But if someone says to me, for example, I've just done a talk down in Southampton, a thing called Wire Wool Events. They do loads of things with female authors or women authors. And, she's the person who organised that has now come back to me and gone, and who else do you recommend? And I think these are ready-made opportunities for meaningfully refreshing some of those contacts. There are people who I've met who, if there's anyone I can think of that I've met that would be suitable for this, it's an excuse to get in contact. I know you're not based in Southampton, but this is really good and worth traveling for. What do you reckon? And not necessarily manufacturing reasons to stay in contact, but making sure that whenever there is a good reason that I avail myself of it, for 2 reasons. First of all, that person will benefit hopefully from that introduction. They're going to know that there is an opportunity there for them to speak that they can take or not. And the person organising the event is potentially going to get a speaker. So they both benefit. But also I've reminded that person of my existence. And the next time someone's saying, do you know of an impossibly tall, slightly weird woman who could come and be in this show for a bit? They might remember my email address. We're now the kind of person who recommends events to one another.
Are you tall?
I'm tall.
How tall are you?
A little over 5'10".
Oh, wow. I am fascinated by height and tall people. I always think I should have been tall. And I'm not. I'm really
just assumed you were. Maybe it's the chair. Those who
it's my personality, darling. I just so much space.
Throne. It is a purple velvet throne. It is the seat of authority. I adore it.
I'm afraid I'm 5'5", so I am not tall at all. I am distinctly average on the height front.
Well, you give out tall girl vibes, so.
I do have some astonishingly high heels, though, which definitely put me in the region of 5'10". So
awesome.
So I've got a couple of patron questions, and the first one is from Audrey, who says, and I think I know the answer to this one. Would you recommend author events? And if so, what have been your favourite events in the past or present? And are there any events you're looking forward to in 2022? So I'm also going to answer this one, but I think this is the perfect segue into you talking about your event. So
yeah,
hit me with it.
So Audrey, awesome question. First of all, would I recommend author events? I would. I really would, because you don't just get to connect with your audience, you get to connect with other authors. It's always nerve-wracking. I've yet to meet anyone who says they unequivocally love it. I'm sure they are out there and they're probably just too embarrassed to admit that they freaking love it. I don't think I have a favourite. I really enjoyed Stylist Live because I had a whole room of I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, about 300 women all yelling, fuck that shit about each other's. So I basically at the beginning, I was like, write down something that's really irritating you, really fucking you off, and then screw it up and just put it on the ground. And it was Jessica Fosterque, who was essentially the person interviewing me and doing the event. And at the end, we got all the women in this room to just hurl these rolled up bits of paper with their frustrations and their anger at the stage. And we would read each one out that we managed to catch and get the whole room to yell, "Fuck that shit." So
oh my God, that's amazing.
The last two we read out were Harvey Weinstein and Peppa Pig. And it was just like, you couldn't ask for better bathos. I swear, if you were there, we didn't rig it. But the number of women who came up to me afterwards went, I would never say to my girlfriends, "I fucking hate this, I'm having a terrible time," and expect that, it's all like good vibes only, let's be positive. Having 299 other women all going, "Yeah, no, that fucking sucks," was surprisingly empowering. So I have a soft spot for that one. But the one that I'm massively looking forward to in 2022, I'm not actually speaking at, I'm organising. So there is a space for a literary festival for people who don't do the Hays and the sort of more Fortnum. If Fortnum and Mason is the Hay Festival, this is the local farmers market, basically. We've got some incredible authors. So Lizzie Damalola Blackburn, who has written a book, her debut comes out in March, called Yinka, Where Is Your Husband? And it is essentially a South London, I think, Nigerian take on Pride and Prejudice. It's fucking awesome. It's like, it's so good. I've had a review copy of it and I inhaled it and I'm in love with the characters. We've got people who are doing, like why noir is still so compelling and why even when life is shit, there's still this desire to read this sort of grimdark stuff. We have people about why romance is so uplifting and so comforting. We have a brilliant panel on what crime and romance have in common psychologically. We have a session where your kids can make their own comic books and tell their own stories. We have Annabelle Sammy, who is an amazing kids author who does one of my daughter's favorite books, Llama Out Loud. We have an intergenerational silent disco. We have interactive theatre where you can get to run a colony on Mars. We have a group of people who do science communications through tabletop roleplay gaming. So if you've ever wanted to learn about science while also doing a sort of Dungeons and Dragons type thing, you can do that. And it's all in a field outside Potter's Bar, which feels like it feels like it's in the middle of nowhere. It's beautiful and peaceful, but it's actually accessible by Oyster card. And I mentioned earlier about accessibility. I'm fucking passionate about this. So we have BSL interpreters, relaxed performances as standards. If you're a member of any kind of access schemes like the Access or the Cinemas card, or I think Hint is the Welsh one. Is it Hint? I've probably got the name of that wrong, or Blue Badge scheme, anything, just, let us know that, and you can access accessible parking and free companion ticket. All of our facilities are accessible. I'm having no bullshit about, there being different types of toilets for different types of people. There are lots of lovely, big individual toilets. And if you need them for baby changing, adult changing, whatever, they are available. I feel doing anything else feels like building a building and then saying, if anyone shows up with a wheelchair, then we'll put in a ramp. And I'm so not here for accessibility as an afterthought. So all of the things I've ever wanted in a festival, I am putting into this one. And it's called Wild Words Festival, and it's the Jubilee weekend. And anyone who's listening, that is the 3rd to the 5th of June. Which I didn't realise when I booked it. There will be a Jubilee big lunch for those who wish to partake in such things, but it's not going to be particularly royalist. I feel like too much of a rebel myself to particularly want to celebrate the monarchy, but any excuse for a Victoria sponge, and we can raise money for Book Trust as well. And anyone who listens to Rebel Author Podcast gets 10% off with the code REBEL, because you guys are amazing and I consider you part of my extended professional network, and every single patron that helps Rebel Author Podcast keep going. Thank you to you, because it's all part of what lifts us all up.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that, because my stepfather is paralyzed from the neck down. And so he is, in a wheelchair all day, every day. And so my mum, as the carer, obviously, gets the free ticket, but also has all the drama of trying to get him in and out of places. And quite often they just don't go if they can't see like access for them. They'll just not go, which I think is awful and sad, because they should be able to go to all of the things that I can go to as an able-bodied person.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like thank you from me on their behalf that you are creating an event that is accessible to everyone. So yeah, I really appreciate that. And
I've got to give a massive shout out to Attitude is Everything, who have done all of the research and development on making live music events accessible to capital D deaf communities and other people with access needs. And just that if you are, and I would highly recommend, again, as part of building networks and giving back to the community, setting up, even if it's just a small, series of events or talks in your region, in your neighborhood, go to the Attitude is Everything website and look at their extremely helpful guidelines on how to make things accessible from the get-go. It's so much easier than trying to bolt it on afterwards when you suddenly realize your venue isn't accessible or you don't know how to, get BSL to you. I mean, yeah, I Attitude is Everything should be on every organizer's Rolodex. They are so good.
Out of curiosity, are you Hertfordshire based?
No, I'm actually based in West London, but I mean, I'm not far from Hertfordshire, and my husband grew up in sort of the adjoining county of Barnet. I'm married to Southerner, ladies and gentlemen. And yeah, but I went up there on the train the first time that I went to look at this field, and I got off at a little station called Cuffley, and you sort of walk up this hill, and then all of a sudden, I mean, I don't know how well sort of people know Hertfordshire, but it's that weird thing that one minute you're in suburbia and then the next minute you're not.
I have lived in Hertfordshire for half my life. Right. And Cuffley, I have friends that live in Cuffley, or friends that used to live in Cuffley, and I know exactly which station you're talking about and exactly what hill you were talking about. So that makes that's made my day. I don't live in Hertfordshire anymore, but we, like I say, we only moved in 2020, and half my life was there because that's where I went to university. So yeah, I love that. And funnily enough, I was born, and my first few years of my life were in West London. So there we go. Look at all of that for connection.
There we go.
So
Cuffley massive.
Cuffley so small as well. Tiny. So just to add to that, some of my favourite events have been the London Book Fair, which is a monstrous event, but it is fantastic, especially if you're an Alliance of Independent Authors member, because you there's always a networking kind of party event there, and quite often they have a stand there. They don't always, but they do. There's an indie author HQ at London Book Fair, so it's not wildly accessible to non-traditional authors, but it's definitely getting better. Although what it will look like now post COVID, I'm not sure. The other ones that are fantastic for indie authors are 20 books to 50k, and they do events in Las Vegas. They also do events they've done 2 events in the UK. I've been to the UK ones. They're doing one in Madrid, and I think they occasionally do them in Australia/New Zealand. Don't know which ones they do, but they definitely do. And then there are bigger ones like NINC. And if you're interested in a digital conference, then I am attending Becca Syme's BeccaCon in July. And that one, well, I mean, you can, it's in Bozeman in Montana, but I can't go there. So I am doing the digital version in July. I think it's July. Yeah, July. And I think that's probably it. I don't know. No, I'm speaking. Oh, there's also SPF Live, which is Mark Dawson's event. That's in June, and London. And then I am speaking at the Festival of Writing in September as well. So yeah, I think that's all of the ones that I can think of off the top of my head.
Events are happening again. Oh,
I know.
Another one that I recommend purely on the strength of the excellent whiskey they serve in the Green Room is I Write, which is the Glasgow Literary Festival. A brilliant networking event for authors and a wonderful place to go and talk. If you ever just basically follow them on Twitter, if you are within anything like shouting distance or night train distance of Glasgow, that is another really fun one where you will meet some incredibly friendly authors.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I do have a last question from Judith, who says, how do you get friendly with other authors in her very limited genre? So it's a small niche, a small genre, and she's wondering how to get started trying to talk to other, writers in that specific genre.
That is a fascinating question. And without knowing the genre, I'm not sure where that genre hangs out. It's quite, in some ways it's quite easy with nonfiction, because even though, we cover everything from sort of history, memoir, the science like I do, we all wind up in the British bloody library now and again. So sometimes just sort of saying, hey, let me know if you're going to the British Library and I might be around and we'll do a coffee. If there is a place that your genre tends to meet up at, like a forensics con, if it's some kind of true crime or whatever it is that is the yearly event, be around that if you can. But also I say, if it's that small, don't underestimate the ability to just email people. This is one of the things that really frickin' surprised me when I moved from academia to writing for the general public. As an academic, I was so used to the fact that people would just email me and go, hello, I read your paper on such and such, and I want to know, here's my list of 9 questions. So used to that. And anything short of an interrogation by email, I tend to respond to quite warmly. And I think most authors do, particularly in a small genre where people do know one another.
I think that is the case probably more for nonfiction and probably for indie authors. I have to say, and I want to be very careful with what I'm saying. There are, as a podcaster and somebody who pitches people, I do not find authors to be that accessible unless they are indie authors or they are nonfiction authors. So I was quite surprised, because this is what you're talking about is exactly what I did to you. I read your book and was like, because also your original book on swearing is quite niche, right? It's quite a niche topic. And so I was like, oh, fuck it. I'm just going to email her. I didn't even expect a response. So I was actually quite pleasantly surprised that you emailed me back, let alone the fact that you came on the podcast the first time.
Yeah.
So and now my podcast is bigger and longer running and has a larger audience. I am able to sprinkle in statistical information that is attractive to potential people to come on the show. And that has helped open the doors. But I have found sometimes there are gatekeepers.
Interesting.
But it depends who you email and how you email and the tone of that email. But what I would say, like, I completely agree with what you're saying for a niche. Because what you can do is you can just go to Amazon and have a look at the books in your genre, then go to those authors' profiles on social media and start commenting or liking or sharing, and then drop into their inbox, because it's like that subliminal recognition. If you have commented,
that smile across the room.
Yeah, exactly.
Liking somebody's posts, responding with a congratulations on your publication day. It is that smile across a crowded room.
Exactly.
For this.
Yeah. And so, I think depending on what the niche is, and again, I don't know the niche either. I have a feeling knowing Judith, I have a feeling it's probably some fantasy or science fiction sub-niche.
Right.
But that smacks to me of there are probably likely indie authors in there that you can just reach out to and just say, hey, and do exactly as you said. I kind of agree with everything that you're saying. And also, sometimes there are gatekeepers. I suppose that's my only, occasionally there are gatekeepers.
I think I've been incredibly lucky. And I know that, sometimes I get no responses. Sometimes I get an I'm too busy response, which I always appreciate because it allows me to move on. So much of this is about knowing that sometimes you're going to get knocked back.
Yes.
But it's not a reflection on you.
Yes. I agree. But, I still get rejected. Like even this week, I pitched somebody who's a huge name and got knocked back. And I'm absolutely fine with that because, you know, like it happens. And oh, well, I'll just try again next time.
Yeah.
Because I'm fucking relentless. I won't stop until I get that person on the show. And that is kind of, I'm not also stalking.
So tenacity does, it I don't know, tenacity or just sheer bloody mindedness, but yes, that willingness to go, well, this person, you know, is either too busy or too, you know, guarded or just has shit going on for them that means that they don't want to do this right now, but I'll try somebody else. I remember as well that someday, Judith, you're going to be the person that someone's going to be going, could I email it?
Yes.
Would that be okay? You know,
I know Judith's writing and she's ridiculously talented, and that is absolutely true. So yeah, I completely agree. The other thing I was going to ask you is, like, I don't know if your inbox is like this, but my inbox is a fucker and it is full constantly. And like sometimes people will email me and I will genuinely miss it because my inbox is so fucking full all of the fucking time that like I'm an inbox zero girl. I just can't do that anymore. That if it's under 100, I'm winning. And you know, and I'm like vicious with hacking out the junk and the shit that doesn't need to be dealt with. So this is like 100 emails that need responses constantly. So like if you don't hear and you hear nothing, follow up. That's the other thing I was going to say, like follow up.
Yeah, for sure. And I have lots of, not filtering as in filtering out, but at the moment, I mean, for a start, I have different inboxes completely for my work stuff, for my writing stuff, my podcasting stuff, and the festival stuff. They are completely separate. But even within that, I have filtering for any of the author names that I've been in correspondence with. That's flagged with Speaker 2022. And so what I can do is I can look at my inbox and I can see that there are these labels, and it's like, okay, first of all, I need to see if any of the speakers have questions for me. So I click that and sort all those out. Then I need to see if there's anyone who is from someone who's not in my address book, you know, he might be new, and sort that out. So it's a little extra work, but when you know, particularly if it's around an event that you're organizing, like even if it's, you know, your book launch or something, having an email filter or an email facility that basically sticks little labels on your email, and then you can go, just show me the stuff that's to do with this book that I'm writing. Just show me this. Yeah, I would die if it weren't for the fact that I can selectively hide 80% of my inbox at any one time.
Right. I have about 4 minutes before my alarm is going to go off for my kiddos' school run time. So,
yes.
Have you got a very short, very fantastic little rebel author kind of rebellion story that you can tell us?
Yes, for the first time ever, I'm actually quite proud of this. For the first time ever, I have asked for someone to explain a bit of feedback that I got. This is on a course that I'm doing at the moment. I'm also in training to be a Gestalt therapist. And there's a bit that said, you know, demonstrate independent research. And I feel like I demonstrated independent research. And I've gone through my entire life. I've gone through 4 fucking degrees in which I've never challenged a mark ever. But I looked at this and there was no checkbox next to demonstrates independent research. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. And instead of going, oh, well, it doesn't matter, I was like, no, I would like to know why. And so for the first time in my life, I've emailed the tutor going, can you explain to me why that's and it sounds like such a stupid, trivial, petty little thing, but I feel like going, I think someone might have made a mistake here. And I think perhaps I'm not being given my due as an author, as any kind of freelance is an essential fucking skill, whether it's, I don't think that person's paid my invoice, or I thought they were included, letting me also claim for expenses, and now they don't seem to be. Or they haven't mentioned a fee, and I'm not sure if there is one. Being able to say, I think actually that I'm worth this. Can you confirm that? It feels like, oh my God, I'm going to offend this person and they're going to hate me and they're never going to work with me again and blah, blah, blah. I'm learning with baby steps to go, no, hang on a minute. This was worth something, wasn't it? That was my rebellion this week, was going, I don't think that was right. Please, can you look at it again?
I love that. One of my questions recently was how are you advocating for your creative self? So I absolutely love that. I think that is amazing. Okay, tell everyone where they can find out more about you, your books, your event that you're putting on. Remind everybody about the Rebel discount.
I will.
Yeah, and anything else you want to add.
Absolutely. So find me on SciRiBy. That's SCI for science, WRI for writing, and BY for Byrne. That's on both Instagram and Twitter. And look for wildwordsfest.com for full details of the festival. And do not forget to use the code REBEL, REBEL, and that will give you 10% off. And there's an extra 10% off early bird if you book before the end of February.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I've had a blast talking to you. Thank you also to all of the show's listeners and all of the show's patrons. If you would like to get early access to all of the episodes, then you can do so by visiting patreon.com/Sasha Black. I'm Sasha Black. You are listening to Emma Byrne, and this was the Rebel Author Podcast. Join me next week when I talk to the amazing Tammi Labrecque. She is the newsletter ninja. She is a master, a demon of newslettering. And trust me when I say you are going to need a notebook and a pencil, because fuck me, does she just pour out information and ideas for you for your reader magnet. Do not miss this one. So join me next week for that.
Don't forget to tune in and subscribe on your podcatcher. And when you have a moment, please leave a review.